Hi, I'm Peter Rowlett.
And I'm Katie Steckles. And Peter, what's today's mathematical object?
Well, today I have stolen a toy from my son. I have a collection of blocks, and I don't totally know what to call them. The box that they came in said MathLink Cubes, which seems to be a brand name. I've seen them called Snap Cubes. I've seen them called...
I think, are they multi-link?
Multi-link Cubes, yeah. My son calls them number blocks, and we'll get to why. And they're basically, I guess, 2 centimetre side length cubes that snap together in one direction. And that's all they do. And they're different colours.
Yeah, so I sort of vaguely remember these from school. Have they got, like, in and out kind of almost like poppers on the faces?
Yeah, so all the faces are in apart from one, which is an out.
Ah, okay.
Which is why they sort of connect in one direction. They're not the best construction material. They're not like a sort of Lego or we've just got a load of Connects and things like this. They're all sorts of much better construction materials. But my son does love building things from them. Anyway, what I thought we could talk about based on these cubes is sort of mathematical play around numbers and counting and things like that with small children.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely remember them being in the maths lessons
at
school. It was not a toy that we got out any other time other than maths.
Oh, okay.
But it wasn't really clear why.
Yes. I think there's a thing about sort of playing with tactile objects. There's a thing called number sense, which is like an understanding of how numbers work. So rather than rote learning how numbers work, getting some understanding of what different magnitudes mean, how numbers go in order and things like that. And you can definitely help number sense by counting objects or by grouping objects together and counting how many are in each group and things like that. So one of the things you can do with these blocks is just count them or connect them together in groups. They come in different colours, so you can do things where different colours are different groups and things like that. You can also count other objects, so you can say how many socks are there in this drawer and match each pair of socks up to a cube if you want to keep track of them, things like that. I seem to remember early on when we got them, we did a little game where we rolled a die and kept a tally of which numbers came up. And then because the tally marks didn't mean much to them, we built each frequency from the blocks so that you could see which one occurred more frequently. I think like when he was 3 or something.
Yeah, I guess if you can connect them into a line or something, you can compare the sizes of 2 numbers.
Definitely. Yeah. So you can make this number is bigger than that number sort of arrangements. So that was sort of all good. He does a lot of sort of independent playing with them mostly. He just seems to enjoy building things from them all the time. So a couple of things are connected to this. One is there is a program the BBC put out called Number Blocks, which is genuinely absolutely amazing as television goes.
Yeah.
So it starts, there's a first episode and there's a little red block with an eye and hands and arms and legs and all that, and this is number 1, and number 1 walks around the world noticing one of things. And then I think it might be in the second episode they come across a mirror, and the mirror is a magic mirror, and if you look in the mirror it duplicates whatever it's seeing. So number 1 goes and stands in front of the mirror, and suddenly there are 2 number 1s. And they run around and have a nice time together, and then they trip and accidentally bang together, and suddenly they're 2.
I mean, I enjoy this sort of like platonic idea that this is how numbers were created. Like, I don't know if this is some kind of deep philosophical discussion about, because it sort of is. Like Russell and Whitehead's proof that 1 + 1 is 2 is like a fundamental piece of maths. Anyway, back to 5 years old.
Yeah. Well, so then the 2 is a different colour and is a twice high block, and then they have a little adventure, and then eventually they find 3 and 4 and 5 and so on. And it kind of stops at 5 for a bit, and they have adventures for a while, and then a later series or something brings in 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and some of the episodes are just sort of playing around with finding a new number, or how many ways can we. This number's a square, or this number's this number can be made up of different ways, or whatever. And some of them are, like there's a 3 Little Pigs one, or whatever. Some of them are just the number blocks go on an adventure and something happens, stuff like that. Some of them are kind of pattern based.
It sounds to me like this is a series that could run and run, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
Its potential for more series is essentially infinite.
Yes. Although it does sort of accelerate, so it gets up into the teens, it gets up to 20, I remember there's quite a good Death Star attack run, as in Star Wars kind of episode, where they keep coming up with I think it's 12 keeps coming up with obstacles. Oh no, it's six. It's 6 holes, and they're all only big enough for a 2, and I'm a 12. What can I do? And then next it's 4 holes that are 3 big, and things like this. So you have to divide 12 of them in different ways. It's stuff like that. It's quite sweet. 20 happened. A few numbers into the 20s happen. And then I think it starts jumping, and suddenly 100 gets involved. And my son had long conjectured the existence of number block 100, and then when he saw it on television, he was very impressed.
Like the mythical figure.
And it kind of, yeah, and it gets into cubes, because now we're into sort of cubes as well as squares and things like that. And they get bigger and bigger, the cubes, until there's 1 million.
Wow!
And that's the sort of big. I think that's as far as it's got so far. I don't know if they've stopped making them or not, really, but. Anyway, so that's kind of amazing. And so he likes just making the number blocks, obviously in the right colours, of course.
Very important, yeah.
And then he takes them on little adventures, so he'll walk them around and he'll, hello 5, hello 4, how are you today? And let's go off and do this thing and all that sort of thing. That's quite sweet.
You wonder if the BBC have missed the marketing potential of a set of number blocks, branded number blocks, that you can build into...
Oh, well, I think that you can get that.
Probably, yeah.
I mean, yes. You can certainly you can buy a sort of CBeebies magazine with number blocks on the front and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I've seen. We have never bothered with that. He seems perfectly happy to imagine a face on these things, and that's fine with me. So, we play around with them. And then the other thing that happened is you gave us a copy of Carl Evans' book, Here Come the Numbers, which is a kind of kid's book, and it talks about numbers and different things about numbers. But one thing that's very important in this book for us is that it arranges numbers in rectangles and squares. And then there are some numbers that can't be arranged in squares or rectangles. And do you know what those numbers are called, kids?
Yeah.
Right. So it uses the word prime.
Yeah.
Right. So some numbers can only be put in a line. Now, for some, you have to sort of get over the leap of a 7x1 rectangle is not a rectangle, it's a line, right? Even though they're blocks.
Yeah.
So somehow that's a little bit awkward, but it's sort of fine. So he got really into this, and this, if you can't make it into a square, can you make it into a rectangle? If you can't make it into a rectangle, then it's a prime number. And so we have a few times where we've sort of played laying these things out and trying to build, 1 is a square or whatever, 2 can't be made into a square, but and 3 can't be made into a square or a rectangle, and you sort of carry on from there. And, that's quite good fun. But it's very odd to have a sort of 3-year-old, I don't know if it's 3 becoming 4 by then, who knows about prime numbers. And we'll sort of ask other adults about prime numbers, and most people are like, oh, I don't quite know what you're talking about, mate. Yeah. Which is slightly odd. So like at nursery, they're trying to get him to count up to 10, and he's sort of, going in and telling them his revelation about which numbers are prime and stuff like that. It's slightly strange.
Yeah, I've proved a marvellous theorem. Yeah.
Yeah. But it's totally from playing with these blocks, and he just sits and arranges them, and this one can't be arranged, therefore. And he doesn't really know about multiplying, and he doesn't know about factors or anything like that, but he has this sense that some numbers can be arranged into a square or a rectangle and some can't.
Yeah.
At one point, I was looking it up, sort of this time last year. Yeah, so I guess he would have just turned 4-ish, something like that. And he was making conjectures. So we're just having a meal or something, and he suddenly announces 21 is prime. He says, I think 21 might be prime. And I'm like, okay, fine. One thing I quite like is at his school, they have this rule where if the kid says something, even if it's right, you don't say yes or no. You sort of say, could you convince me of that? So his teacher told me that they have this, if a kid comes up to her and says, I think 5 + 1 is 6, she won't say, yay, well done, marvellous. She'll say, that's an interesting idea. Could you convince me of that? And then they have to come up with a convincing argument, and then they get the praise or whatever. So 21 is prime. So we investigated, and he managed to build it into a rectangle. So therefore it's not prime.
Yeah.
Okay. But that's a conjecture.
Yeah.
Test it.
I mean, is this just a regular school? It's not like a mathematical, forming school that produces...
No, well, I don't think he was in school by then. This is just him playing and Carl's book. He did quite an impressive thing, which is that we were playing with... He's got 99 of these blocks, because we bought a pack of 100, and he was 3. Yep. And therefore one of them has gone missing. We've never found out where it went. So he's got 99 of them. And we were arranging them into... I can't remember. We've done a few things where we've put them all in a line and seen whether that line is bigger than me and things like this, if I lay down next to it and stuff like that. And at one point he was we were playing around with nines, and he made his 99 blocks into 11 nines, because 9 is a square, and then he connected them all together. And then he kind of looked at this and he said, if we break it into sixes, it'll make some sixes and one 3.
Wow.
I'm like, okay. So we tried that, and yes, that's right. And I'm like, how do you know that? But this is just from shuffling these blocks around. It's not that he's done any sort of, he's not done the multiplication in a knowing way. He's just sort of looked at these piles of nines and gone, well, if I make them into sixes, there'll be 3 left over. And of course, as with 21 is prime, he may well just be wrong. It may well have just been either there'll be 3 left over or there won't, and I'm going to guess that there will, and he happens to be right. So we're like, oh my goodness, where's that come from? But it's probably just a sort of guesswork thing.
Yeah.
He also, his third conjecture was that 18 was square,
Right.
And the fourth one was that all squares are even.
Ooh.
And each of those was either proven or disproven.
Yeah.
He got very confused for a while between odd numbers and prime numbers.
Well, there's a lot of overlap, isn't there?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
He is 4,
Yeah.
so fair enough.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I just think this is amazing as a sort of tool and a device, and he's played around and all this. The other thing he likes doing with them is building things, and so the current configuration of the pile of blocks I picked up from his play pile this morning is a spaceship. He tells me.
Correct.
So I don't know whether every listener realises, but when we publish one of these episodes at aperiodical.com/podcasts, we also put up a picture of the object. So the picture of the object I'm going to take is the spaceship this morning. But he builds these sort of elaborate structures, and they're often, I think they're always nicely symmetrical in some way, and they're often nicely coloured and things like that.
Yeah.
So this one that he's done today, everything it's got a sort of left-right symmetry.
Yeah.
One side is exactly like the other side. It just seems to do that automatically. It's quite nice.
Yeah, it's kind of satisfying, isn't it, I guess, if you...
Yeah, I think so. And now, now he's a bit older, he has these magnet tiles that he builds polyhedra from, and we have things called pattern blocks and Cuisenaire rods, and we just got a load of Connects, which is this sort of building construction tool game thing.
Yeah, that's got some lengths and angles and stuff as well, I think.
Yeah. So there's loads of stuff like that he's really into as well. But he does keep going back to the number blocks. Usually these days he builds spaceships for his other, this one's got a little hollow for his other toys to go in when they're flying around. It's that sort of thing, which is quite nice. But I don't know, I just think it's lovely.
Yeah, well, there's something about this idea of kind of physical manifestations of abstract concepts, because maths is quite often about things that are a bit abstract. And, you could argue that numbers are quite a concrete thing because they're so prevalent, and you need to be able to, going back to how many sheep do I have? They're a really fundamental thing that's almost always tied to something in the real world. But at the same time, they are this abstract thing, and notions of primality and square numbers and this kind of thing can be physically manifested using these cubes.
Yeah, and I feel like you learn a lot from just playing with them, because even numbers squared are always even, and odd numbers squared are always odd, and there's a really nice way to show that with the cubes.
Yeah, well, you see these sort of visual proofs. So I think it's the sum of the first n odd numbers is always square or something like that.
Yeah.
And you can do it by making a straight line and then bending it halfway along, and then they all just stack together to make a nice square.
Yeah.
And that's a visual proof that you often see, but you could definitely do that with cubes as well. So
there's a really nice episode of Number Blocks where I can't remember, it must be sort of 1, 4, 9 and 16 go into a sort of lost temple in a jungle or something.
Like the start of a joke, isn't it?
Yeah. That's right. And the culmination of the episode is that they find 25. They sort of conjecture that 25 is this by finding this engraving on a temple wall or whatever. And there's just this little moment where it flashes through a load of patterns that you can make from 25, and one of them is that. It's the sum of the odd numbers version. Nice. It's quite nice.
Good.
But you can do other things. You can measure things. There's this quite fun game we play where we build towers. So we roll a die, and then whatever number comes up, you build a tower of that height. I think we start with a piece of paper with kind of 8 positions on it, and those are going to be your 8 towers. You roll, you get a 4, you build a tower of height 4 and put it on one of your positions. And then once you've both filled up all your positions, you can count and see who's got the most blocks in their city or who's got the tallest tower or whatever it is. But stuff like that is really good because you're just playing with numbers and getting used to numbers and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Also, I bought some different shaped dice so that we could do things that weren't just numbers up to 6, basically, when we play that game.
Yeah.
And the other thing is patterns. There's a load of kind of red, blue, green, what comes next kind of
absolutely,
stuff that you can do with these things as well. So that's quite cool.
And I'm pretty sure that I do this as well. Like, we've got certain board games where the pieces just include a big pile of little cubes.
Right.
And when I'm putting them away, I just arrange them in a rectangle.
Yes.
And if I can't make a 6x4 rectangle, I go looking on the floor for the one that's missing.
Yeah.
Because that's just the easiest way to check that I've got 24. Rather than sitting and counting them all, I just put them back in the bag, which is just wide enough for 6 cubes.
Yeah.
And if I can make 4 rows, then I know I've got all the cubes there.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's kind of stuck with me, that idea of playing with physical manifestations of numbers. I like that. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And you can do much more advanced stuff. So I wrote a blog post, which perhaps I'll try and remember to link to this from the podcast page. But I wrote a post about mathematical play with young children, basically. And Mike Lawler, who's Mike and Ali on Twitter, replied with some things that he's done with his kids with snap cubes. And it's dividing fractions, seeing that a negative times a negative is a positive, and making a binary adding machine.
Wow, that's,
right, okay.
Yeah.
I mean, that's all much more advanced than anything we've done, but
Yeah.
it's kind of cool that you can do this stuff with the, with the physical blocks, I think.
Yeah. Cool. And you often seem to share things that you're doing with mathematical kind of leanings on Twitter, right? There's the hashtag for...
Yeah, there's a hashtag which is TMWYK, which is talking maths with your kids.
Yeah.
Or
with young kids. Yeah. If they're not yours, then you're still allowed. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you search that on Twitter, TMWYK, you find a load of stuff. And a lot of the things that I do with him, I've seen on there and I think, oh, that's quite cool. We'll give that a go or whatever. It's quite a nice thing that people are sharing lovely stuff. Yeah.
Cool. Well, I am at Steckles on Twitter.
And I'm at Peter Rowlett on Twitter.
And we both blog at aperiodical.com, which is where you can find more episodes of this podcast.
And if you want to email us and suggest any objects that we might look into or say anything about the objects we've been talking about, you can email objects@aperiodical.com.
The music is Funk Game Loop by Kevin MacLeod, licensed under Creative Commons.